Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is Corey, better known as the Seaman, and I want to welcome you to another edition of the Seaman's Cinema Sit Down. It's time to dive into a movie review, and I'm going to apologize because I'm behind on putting this up, but I also intentionally kind of waited to make sure I could see it a second time, and I've been so busy. It took a while to see it that second time, but I'm glad I did because I think it's helped clean up my thought process, and also I picked up on a bunch of other stuff that maybe we can't specifically touch on here, but I'm glad that I picked up on it. And I don't want to waste any more time, man, because this is a horror epic that we've all been waiting for a while, and I want to dive right in. So why don't you pull up a chair, man, take a seat. We're getting ready to dive in, spoiler-free, into It Chapter 2. And as I said, man, this is a horror epic. Like, chapter 1 and 2 are one story. It is so epic. Muschietti is teasing that he has a 6.5 hour cut that he wants to do that would combine both films for like a release to the public. Not get the 2:45 is long, and that's one of the problems I would say with this movie is that the 2 hour and 45 minute length, I think, one, it's already hurt the box office, right? The opening numbers. You'd think something that's so highly anticipated, like It Chapter 2, it would have surpassed what It Chapter 1 did its opening weekend. It came in a little under. I think the 2 hour, 45 minute mark might do that to people. And when you watch the movie, its pacing does feel a little slow. But if you love this material, you get past that real quick. The only reason I thought the pacing was off is because I knew there was like so much more to tell, and we were only like the halfway point. I'm like, damn, man, like, this has already been long. But everything you get is fantastic. So before we dive in any further, why don't we switch up the locale? You know, I got this like trusty snap that I never ever used, and I thought we should go someplace creepier. Maybe like the dairy sewers. I'm going to slide over here because you can see the exit to the sewers right over there. And if I got to bounce, I want you guys to know where we're going. At least be able to see me get away. But anyway, I thought it'd be perfect to just come to a creepier, dark, gloomy, dank sewer to talk about It Chapter 2. And, you know, like I said, despite its length, this movie works so well because of how Andy Muschietti adapts the material through 2 films now and one massive horror story. We've learned that this guy not only like understands the character so well, but he understands the source material. And like, one of the things that I was hoping that maybe we would see is an ending that sticks closer to what the book is. And I was like a little disappointed when I realized we weren't going to go there. But when you know what the ending of the book is, and mild spoiler, this doesn't spoil anything about the movie, but if you want to read the book, I'm spoiling parts of the end. But essentially, where it comes from is this dimension called the Macroverse, and like how you get there is really messed up. And it's kind of all, it's like a big heady trip space. And King, you know, he went through a period of time where some of his material was out there. This is some of the furthest out there stuff he ever did. And it's not something that would work. I mean, you introduce a giant turtle and like a god type entity, and it would not translate to the screen very well. But what Muschietti does is he alters it, but adapts it in ways where you're like, oh my gosh, I never thought I'd see that. Oh my gosh, I can't believe I saw that. Oh my gosh, that's such a cool tweak on what everyone thought it was. Like the final form that it takes in the book is a spider. And in the TV miniseries is also like a spider. But what Muschietti does is he adapts it in a way that allows Bill Skarsgård's performance to continue to come through. They actually created this cool like mocap thing that he was in so that he could get a perspective of like where his body would be in relation to all the CGI stuff. And that blending is just so perfect. And that's the stuff that Muschietti does so well as dropping in Easter eggs. For people who are like have read the book and know that like there's a thing in the Macroverse that like, you know, we've seen him pay tribute to before. And if you're watching this sequence between Bill and Mike, where Mike is kind of filling Bill in on like things about its history, listen to the words he says, because he's going to say something that makes you go, whoa, they just said that, but then also that thing ties directly into part of the adaptation of the end in a way where you're like, that's a perfect way to kind of take things that I know we're familiar with and apply them to the movie. And Muschietti does it so well, man. He just understands enough where it's like, I'm going to put this here and this here and this here. And people who've read the book or know the material are gonna go, wow, that's awesome. Like, you know what you're talking about, but you honor the material in a way that its tone, it feels correct. And that was what he did so well with Chapter 1. That's what he does really well here with Chapter 2. The other thing he does really well with Chapter 2 is he dives right in, man. He doesn't waste any time. And I think I want to put this shirt on because it's a perfect red color for like the balloon, because I don't have a clown shirt, but it's also got, the Avengers on it. And I think the Avengers are actually the best way that you can compare this movie to something. Infinity War and Endgame are not a movie and a sequel. It's one continual story that's just broken up into two parts because there's so much of it. Same thing here with it, Chapter 1 and Chapter 2. It's not a sequel. It is a continued story. This is all one thing. It's why Muschietti wants to do a 6.5 hour cut that combines the two movies, which I'm so here for. Like, even though 2:45 is long, I want everything, because everything he puts on, you might feel like the length of the movie is getting to you, but you still want to keep watching. It's like when you're eating like pizza and you're so stuffed, but there's 2 pizzas left, and you're like, yeah, let's just keep going. That's what the movie kind of does. And when you kind of are working in all of that, and it's one continual story, the Infinity War Endgame, it's a perfect mashup, because, yes, do I like Endgame more than Infinity War? Sure, because it was everything I ever wanted in a superhero movie. But I think Infinity War is the better crafted movie. It does most of the storytelling. It sets the foundation. It does all the heavy lifting so that we can just dive into Endgame and get to all the good, juicy things we want to see. Same thing here. Chapter 1 does all the storytelling. It builds the characters so that when we get to the adult versions, yes, it's a whole new cast, but you don't have to reintroduce me to these people, because I know who they are. And that's the other thing, too. The casting is so brilliant that you really do feel like you're watching adult versions of the kids from the first movie, so that it does. Mike walks on screen, I'm like, that's Mike. And that's Bill. And there's Beverly. And there's Eddie and Richie. And, you just go, oh my gosh, let's just dive right into it. I'm here to watch the Adult Losers Club take down this clown one more time. I don't need to go back through, their story. And that was, I thought, the brilliant part about separating the movies from the get-go. Because the book is from the adult's perspective, the TV series from the adult perspective, and it bounces back. But to get a child's story and, kind of do that in full separately before diving into the adults, perfect. And then when you talk about adaptation, we obviously needed that original cast back because it was so beloved. So what does Muschietti do? He says, you know what? We're going to go to flashbacks. We're going to show stuff that we haven't seen people. I specifically left a period of time between August and September that we don't see in Chapter 1 because it's going to be part of the flashback stuff we use for Chapter 2. So you're not just seeing things that we've seen on screen before, which he does. We do get to watch scenes happen again from different angles or perspectives. But he also gets to do new things with the cast. And it was so nice to see the original cast back. Everybody just absolutely crushing it. And when you watch that and then sync it up with the adult, versions of the Losers Club, one, you get an adaptation that presents the material in the way the book is. It goes back and forth. And the thing is, when you leave Derry, you forget everything. So when you come back, you start to remember, but Mike kind of sends everybody on this quest to find talismans for this ritual thing that they do, which, again, another wonderful change. The ritual of Chud, spoilers, makes an appearance. It's not what we remember it to be if we've read the books, but again, nods and things. And in doing that, we're able to kind of get that structure of, the back and forth, because as you find your talisman, you get the memory of that moment, and that fills in that gap from the first movie that we didn't see, and not only fills in those things, but also allows us to see the original Losers Club, and it was so nice. But this movie, of course, is about the Adult Losers Club, and it's so well casted. Visually, it's wild. Actor James Ranson, who plays Eddie Kazbrak, there's literally a moment where, young Eddie is here, and old Eddie steps into him, and their faces kind of crossfade. He is identical to Jack Dylan Grazer. It's crazy. And then throw on top of that their performances sing so well to the personalities and performances of the first one. It's just a really, really impressive outing from this new cast, which includes Jessica Chastain as Beverly, James McAvoy as Bill Denbrough, Bill Hader as Richie, Isaiah Mustafa as Mike, Jay Ryan as Ben, and James Ranson as Eddie, and Andy Bean as Stanley. And like I said, the fact that they visually look so spot on and then are also like just encapsulate the young characters. We don't need to rebuild anything. We can just dive right in, and we get to have fun with all these people. And I loved everything Muschietti does. He does something with Stanley that, like, you know, works from like the story perspective of what happened in the book, but then also kind of adds something to the back part of the movie that you're like, oh my gosh. And he does that throughout the movie, where the emotional beats in this film really hit home, man. And I was not expecting to be like emotionally driven too much in an It movie. But all of that stuff ends because of the delivery of performances of the actors and the material that Muschietti is giving them. And, you know, everybody does a great job. There are a couple of these adult losers that stand out more than the others because of their performances. And obviously, James McAvoy is going to be one of those people. His performance as Bill is just so spot on. He gets the stutter thing where it's not like his take on the stutter. It's like he really is doing what Jaden Martell did as young Bill. And it matches, and the acting, it's so perfect. And he gets, you know, some of the scenes that, you know, kind of are driving, because everything goes back to Georgie and kind of how they play with that and the guilt that he has. I just love the performance and what they did with Bill here as an adult loser. But then on top of that, you know, Mike, who's played, like I said, by Isaiah Mustafa, that was one of the things that we were worried about in Chapter 1, right? Like, we gave Ben the history stuff, and it was like, oh my gosh, is Ben going to be the one that stays behind? Because that's supposed to be Mike's deal. And what's nice here is Mike is the one who stays behind like he does in the book, and he becomes the It historian. And they adapt all that really well, and he gets a lot more screen time, and Isaiah Mustafa plays it so perfectly. Like, you honestly feel like you're looking at an adult version of Chosen Jacobs. Like, the way he talks and his delivery and his speech patterns, perfect syncing. So I was really, really impressed with his performance, but the two that stand out the most in this movie, of course, are James Ranson as Eddie Kazbrak, and Bill Hader as Richie Tozier. Their relationship in the movie is wonderful. Muschietti kind of tackles it in a different way and adds things to the characters that are sort of hinted at in the books, but kind of puts a twist on it that ties really well to some of the stuff that's going on, and it gives you a version that we hadn't seen. And it just reestablishes their connection, their friendship, their bond, and those two in Hader and Ranson, they feel like they've been friends for forever. And like I said, Ranson just looks exactly like Jack Dylan Grazer. But like, it just nails the Eddie stuff. Like, he's so good. And you know, I was just so impressed with that. But then Bill Hader's the guy who steals the entire show. And I've been a Bill Hader fan for a long time. But he, you know, everyone just thinks of him as a comedy guy, and I've seen him do things that are more dramatic, specifically Barry. If you haven't checked out that, you really should watch it. Great HBO show, but really displays the type of actor and the range that Bill Hader has. And here, Muschietti allows him to do the same thing. One, he's a absolute perfect incarnation of Finn Wolfhard's Richie as an adult. But just the way he delivers and the jokes and the humor in the movie is great. And a lot of that comes from Richie and Eddie's back and forth. And it's the thing they nail. That back and forth is so spot on to Jack Dylan Grazer and Finn Wolfhard's performances. You fall right back into it. Those are the things that make you feel like these are the people I watched before. This isn't a new story. It's a continuation. And then all the emotional beats in the movie. Obviously, some are attached to Bill, but Bill Hader's performance it gets you emotional every time you watch it, because he just goes all the way in and gives a performance that's super special. It's the one that stands out the most. It's the one that everyone should be talking about, and it would be nice to see him recognized for it. I don't know if an Oscar is something that could come from this performance, but in a world where like I haven't seen a ton of huge guaranteed lock in the supporting actor, maybe you could. But I hope this is something that launches him to the world as like he's more than just a funny guy. Yeah, he does the funny really good, but everything else is just spectacular. And it was really nice to watch Bill Hader just nail it, and watch all these people nail it. I mean, even Jessica Chastain and Jay Ryan, the things that are adapted by their characters, and the way Muschietti plays with them, and specifically them relationship-wise, like, that thing that just kind of keeps lingering out there. Beverly doesn't know who wrote that poem, and Ben does. We get to play with that more. And those two, when they're together, feel just like what you got in the first movie, and you get really nice performances and really fun scenes with both of them. This whole cast just delivers on all the fronts that you want it to in carrying the story. But of course, Bill Skarsgård is our driver, if you will. And what he does as Pennywise, again, is just absolutely phenomenal. The physicality, the energy that comes from him in these movies, it's not shocking when you hear him say it's an exhausting role. And that it's like nice to get out of it every once in a while, as much as he loves to play it, because he does, man. He fully commits 110% of himself every time he's on screen. And what's nice, I saw him interviewed, and I want to say it was Kimmel, maybe. I like kind of asked him like, what kind of influenced or inspired you like things for it, and trying to get into the mind of the character. And he's like, I watch a lot of like strange docs and things. I like animal docs, and I was like, what animal would it be? He's like, I think it's a perfect cross between a hyena and a bear. Like hyena, you immediately get it, right? It's the laughing animal. It's wild. It's unpredictable. It's crazy. All the things that Pennywise is. And like the bear, and he's like, yeah, well, you ever see a bear when it gets like mad? Like its lower lip kind of sags and it drools, and I'm like, that's where oh my gosh, brilliant. And those are the things that Skarsgård just enhances the character with, and his performance, the way he can physically alter his lips or his eyes, allow you to do things that could be prosthetic or CGI that just work better because he's doing all of it. And the other thing too here is, in Chapter 1, you were scaring kids. And Chapter 1's terrifying, but I never jumped when I saw that movie in the theater. Chapter 2, you gotta scare adults. And adults, it takes more. And Muschietti, rightfully so, dials up the horror for this one. And I jumped like 3 or 4 times. And it's because he builds these really, really wonderful monsters, again, for it to play. And, just these really wonderful horror sequences. And I have a couple favorite scary /it moments in the movie, and without spoiling, I'm gonna just dive in, man. Like the opening and the finale, I'm gonna put together because, one, again, really, really nice ways of adapting the material, but also like just sets the tone. Like right away, the opening scene, like I said, is brutal, it's visceral, and then when you get to your, scary it moment, you're just like, yeah, all right, I'm ready to go, man. Like, yeah, I'm a little creeped out, but like, I'm here for it. And the same thing with the finale. It's the perfect end to the movie, man. It gives you all the stuff you want and another wonderful, strong performance that does get you to jump a lot more, man. Like, it's one of those things where it's like that version of Pennywise is one of my favorite versions in the movie. It's one of my favorite adaptations and tweaks. Like, oh, man, seeing it that way, brilliant. But also, like, scary as anything. The end is absolutely terrifying. So the opening and the finale, two of my favorite things, and I think the perfect way to open and end and kind of bookend this chapter of the story. Then, of course, if you've watched the trailers, we've seen that Bill goes to like a fun house. That whole sequence is wonderful. And it's not so much like, like we've seen the Hall of Mirrors in the trailer. And it's not what you would expect the Hall of Mirrors scene to be, but it plays with things that it can do so well. Reflections, turns, twists, and although I thought it might be longer, it's messed up, horrifying. It gets you feeling claustrophobic and like real panic, and how it handles itself in relation to what's going on with Bill so directly fits perfectly for that character. It's such a wonderful scene to watch, and really, really, like I said, one of my favorite stretches of McAvoy in the movie. Then you have Bev's old house, which we've also seen in the trailers, and when Beverly goes there, you got that creepy old lady who on her own is just terrifying. And in the trailer, it's like, oh no, you hear the stomping, but you don't see anything. Well, obviously in the movie we get to see it, and it's absolutely terrifying. I loved what Muschietti did with this sequence and that creature. Again, another one of the forms that it takes. You're just like, oh man, like your heart is like in your throat. So I absolutely loved that sequence. I think the biggest jump I had in the movie stems from a scene with Richie where he's back in that park that we saw everybody, where it's like the clown that was in the backstage kind of like reaching out to him. And again, wonderful thing. Watch the people in the town and things in the background with like things that are paying attention to the Losers Club. Just, it drops everywhere, just like that moment. But in that park, we get another sequence that like, one pays tribute to like a wonderful moment from the book and something that King kind of like had on his wish list. But two, also absolutely terrifying. I literally jumped out of my seat during that sequence, and I was like, it took a while for me to come back down. But I think the scariest moment in the entire film, and it's so creepy because of its subtlety, and it's the way in which we get to see how it can lure kids in. And it's a sequence that takes place underneath a set of bleachers. similar in approach to the Georgie sequence, and that's when he is his scariest. Yeah, you can make him this big, crazy, creepy monster, or all these different things. I mean, oh, there's so many cool, wonderful moments and different versions he can take. But when he is just himself as Pennywise, luring in a kid, and you know what's going to come, oh man, that scene, that's the one that'll sit with you for days and days. And when you're gonna make a horror epic, you need something that's gonna sit with you for a couple days, and that's definitely the moment. So, look, there's a lot to be had here with this movie. Like I said, it's very big, and it's a horror epic, and it's the most epic, wonderful conclusion to that first chapter. That, yeah, okay, it's a little long, but everything you're getting, the performances, the technical stuff, even the CGI, the blend between CGI and practical, is so wonderful that it makes everything feel real. Like when he is this true form, you're like, that could be there. Like, I understand why they're running, and those are the things, man. There's just moments and the Easter eggs and the nods. It's just, when you watch both, and I watched chapter 1 and then went and saw chapter 2 for when I did it the second time, it's just a perfectly well-told story that adapts things and creates scary stuff that you want to see. And I have to applaud Muschietti, and I have to say I'm so here for a 6.5-hour version of this in full, because I think what you could get would be marvelous, and I want to see anything that didn't make it into the movie, because I heard he cut a lot for timing and for graphicness, and I'm here for all those things. So I'm a huge fan of It Chapter 2. I am a huge fan of the Andy Muschietti It. Just wonderfully acted, great castings, just all these things. It's a wonderful, like I said, horror epic, and a perfect continuation of Chapter 1. I really thought everybody here nailed it. If you haven't seen it, man, get over the 2 hours and 45 minutes, because it's so well worth it, especially if you're a horror fan or a King fan. It's one of the best adapted versions I've ever seen. So there you go, man. Those are all my spoiler-free thoughts. I told you there's gotta be a lot of them. But oh man, I love this movie. But now I want to know what you're thinking, man. Have you watched Chapter 1 and Chapter 2? Try not to spoil anything, but tell me what you liked or didn't like. What were your favorite scary moments in the film? And if you haven't seen either, or just haven't seen Chapter 2, have what we've been talking about, has it enticed you if you want to get in on this? I think if you're a horror fan, you have to. Like I said, it's one of the best adapted pieces of horror literature I've ever seen, and it makes me excited to see what Andy Muschietti does next. So if you're excited about all that stuff, let me know down below. If you just don't care about this movie, if clowns are not your thing, I understand. I got friends who won't see the movie because I do with scary clowns. I get it. So if you're feeling like that, leave everything you're thinking down below. As always, if you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up. And if you're new, you want to come hang out with the old Seaman, maybe not in the creepy dairy sewers, but back at the old Seaman cave, then you gotta go hit that subscribe button, little bell that follows, so you can get alerts every time I make a new video. For the Seaman's Cinema Sit-Down, I am the Seaman, and I'm signing off. Peace. Wait, do you guys hear? Are those? Oh my God, rats! Oh no! Oh, I can't. They can't run out that way. Oh, why is? Oh no! Oh, you see this, right? Like, I'm not just seeing this myself. Like, that's the balloon. Why is? Oh, I don't know where to go. No, what happened? Ah! Well, I'll be. You guys are still here. You must be looking for some more content. Well, don't worry. Seaman's got you covered, man. You got videos like this guy and this guy. And if you haven't yet, and you want to come check out all the Seaman goodies, join the Cinema Sit-Down squad, man. Hit that subscribe button. And don't forget to hit the little bell down below that, too, so you can get alerts every time I make new videos.